Okay. Do we have other work session items?
Yeah, we do.
Okay. It's not on a list. Somebody didn't give me a list.
I got it. One of the things that'll come next month, as a board action item, is, the computer replacement, cycle. Bill will go ahead and talk about this. We need to talk about it tonight, so that it can be an April action item, in order to get, equipment ordered and ready, because they do all of the replacement and all of the updates and all of that sort of stuff through the summer. And if we want to be ready for the start of fall classes, then they, need to get started on that. So, Bill, there
Okay,
you go.
thank you. So annually, about this time every year, we bring to you our computer replacement plan. We budget for computer replacement and technology replacements to upgrade and maintain our classrooms, our collaboration equipment within the classrooms, including laptops and workstations. This year, this budgeted item recommends the purchase of Dell desktops. So we don't have any real laptops. We've got a few, but those are worked in here, but it's mostly desktops that need to be replaced in classrooms for our computer labs and our classroom computers that are used for classes. So currently we have a bunch of Dell Optiplex 3050s, which don't have the required hardware in them to be able to run Windows 11, which is where we're at with the rest of the institution. There's about 500 computers, I think. 500 computers on this quote. We got quotes from Dell, from HP, and from ByteSpeed. We also got a quote from Lenovo, but they couldn't meet the standards that we needed for this generation of processor and this generation and the amount of memory that we needed for the chipset. So the bid from Dell came in at the lowest bid. It's $298,000, $298,120. It's just a little bit of background on this. We've worked Matt Jansen, who's my client services director. We run a program called LabStats, which kind of gives us some information about, we're switching that out to a new program, but anyway, it gives us information about utilization and on the computers themselves. We also worked with Zach Canby through a program called Ad Astra to help us really make sure that we're not overpopulating rooms with computers. And so we've actually cut this number down from where we would only be. As you guys know, or as we've discussed in the past, we maintain about 2,500 devices across the institution, or across all of our sites across the institution. And we've moved, I would say 90-ish, 95% of our computers to a 5-year replacement cycle. As you think back in time, there's been times that there are companies that are in a 3-year replacement cycle and 4-year and 5-year. We've been able to stretch ours to a 5-year replacement cycle based on how we've built them. And also the fact that while technology is advancing, a lot of it's moving to the cloud. And so the processing power necessary on the computer hasn't been as great or isn't evolving as quickly. So our desktops are on a 5-year replacement cycle. So you're going to see about 500-ish each year. Again, we're actively working to make sure that we don't have a bunch of extra computers sitting around where we don't need them. This will be, the vast majority of these are in the classrooms. There are a couple you'll notice in the topic for discussion where it also says staff offices. There's a few of those that are shared computers. So an example would be when you go to the admissions office, the person at the front desk, that's a shared desktop. We use the same model in the classrooms that we do for those. A lot of our staff that sit back in the admissions office or in HR or finance are on laptops because it allows for some mobility and the opportunity to get more productive hours out of them if they're have a computer strapped to them at all times. So that's where we're at. It came out to just under, if I'm good at math, it comes out to just under $600 per computer. It's a great price from Dell for these Optiplexes. Yes, sir.
I assume we can use existing monitors.
There's always yes.
Within reason, not
Yeah, the answer to
$100
that's absolutely. I would tell you that throughout the year, we have to replace monitors when they come up, but this is not a replacement of monitors as well. This is the computers. It's $600.
Are we gonna have another ask later for monitors for these?
No, like I said, those, we have a fund that replaces those as needed. Monitors last as long as monitors last. So we did go through a few years ago and we used some of our technology money when we saved some on some of the with some of the COVID contracts. We did upgrade, we still had some people on some pretty small monitors, and the amount of work that we're all doing on our computers now requires either multiple monitors or either dual monitors or bigger ones. So we went through that upgrade a few years ago. So now it's just if a monitor dies, we go replace it. I know that this doesn't include any monitors, and I don't think there's any large scale monitor projects coming. So I think for lack of
That'd be the following.
no, I mean,
I'm just
it's,
kidding.
yeah, no, I mean, we're really, our standard is a 24-inch monitor. We have some that are bigger. Are all standard also for what I would call our business class, so staff and even faculty in their offices is dual monitors. So we've met those standards with funds that we have. So I'm here for any questions. I won't be at next month's meeting. I'll be at a conference. So Christina, my deputy CI, will be sitting here, and then Matt Jansen, who's our client services director, will be here if there's other questions. But this is, again, our standard annual. It's budgeted, and this is what we have to do to keep technology going.
And all of these 500 are running Windows 10, which is now non-supported.
That's correct. Yeah. And then we still have some, after this, we'll still have a few left out there with Windows 10, but we're figuring those out through attrition as we see a classroom that shrinks and we can pull one. But this is the move that we have to make to get everything to Windows 11. Yes, ma'am.
I can't believe Shelby didn't ask this. Now, what are you gonna do with the old ones?
They'll be moved to our, Ribbit has our recycling
Ribbit.
contract right now. They're the
We
only,
don't
they're
do
the
auction.
only recycling company that will buy them from us.
Yes.
And we do not do auctions like we used to. That was not
Jim and
supportable
Dad
for
used
us.
to do the auction.
Back in the day.
I mean, look, a long time ago, I bought stuff at the auctions too
Yeah,
before I ever
me
came to
too.
work here,
I
but
bought a moped.
Yeah.
but the reality for us with computers, as I've said before, is when
Worked
we
for
sold
2 days.
computers at the auctions, generally, we pulled the hard drives out of them and torn the Microsoft license number off of them because that belonged to the college. And so people would take them home and they knew that that was gone, but they take them home and immediately call us and say, why doesn't my computer work and do everything I want it to do? So it's you pop one that doesn't have a hard drive and has no licensing. So, and then I just don't have the staff to continue fielding those calls. Again, as we've talked, and we do this, we bid this every 3 years, but we've looked at different recycling companies and no one else will pay us for monitors and computers, which Ribbit does. So.
Good.
Other thoughts, comments, concerns, complaints? Fantastic.
Not
done.
Not for you.
Okay. Do we have any other items for the work session?
Budget update. Ken's gonna do some budget stuff.
Okay.
And then, I know that we, provided some enrollment information, and so if there's some questions about that, I think Heather and Bill are prepared to answer some of those. ESOM submitted, some of the credit hour information and, Kent provided the budgets, so probably, some of that probably relates more to, the enrollment information. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, just so I don't forget about it, our May work session is right now scheduled on Memorial Day. I think attendance might be light.
Okay.
Yeah, 0.
Maybe we shouldn't have one.
I thought I had it on my
Here.
calendar as it was on the Tuesday.
I
The
have
28th.
20th.
I do not show it being moved online,
don't-
but I may have missed it. We could just have a short one after the normal.
We could
meeting.
potentially have it after the board meeting, maybe in May.
Or just skip it.
An email blast. Yeah, I'm just fine to skip it. As long as we don't need to meet for the trustee search.
Okay. Kent, do you have comments?
Yes, if we're ready, I'd be happy to go ahead and get started. Let me share my screen here. So we passed out a little packet of documents here. There's 3 separate documents I'd like to go through. And then when we're done with these, I have one more to pass out later. And we'd like to start by just going through the board calendar or the budget calendar. So we do have a work session scheduled for April 22nd, and that is the time when we will present the spring budget update to you. We'll be getting the booklets to you about a week in advance of that, and that will contain the preliminary budget recommendation for next year. So as we go on through the documents tonight, we're going to talk to you about where the admin team feels we are right now, and then we will be moving forward with that. We still have things that we're analyzing and decisions that can be made to update that, but the plan is that we will give you the preliminary budget recommendation April 22nd. Then we do, in the calendar I'm showing you, does show May 27th as a work session. We talked about that also, I think, in VP meeting, that it can either be moved or canceled, however you want to deal with that. At the June board meeting, this is before the June board meeting, on June 15th, the county clerk will provide us with the revenue neutral rate. We don't do anything with it at that time, but it lets us know what it is. June 24th would be a possible budget work session if the board's desiring to dig into some of these, some of the budget analysis or look at the budget in a deeper way. We do have these possibilities for work sessions. Of course, our year end is June 30th, and at the July board meeting, we will give you a preliminary update of the year end close. That few days between June 30th and the July work session. We have Carrie Potter over here, and she's running ragged those few days with her staff, trying to close the books, get all the adjustments made, and allow us to see where we ended up on a cash basis. Also at that meeting, we will need the board to approve the intent to exceed the revenue neutral rate. July 20th is the date that I have to give that information to the county clerk. That's why we have to have the board take that action on July 9th. July 22nd, it's a potential for a work date. On August 10th is when the county clerk sends out all the notices to the taxpayers, giving the information that we have provided with them on the intent for next year's taxes. Then at the August work session, this is when we will need you to approve the notice of public hearing and the hearing for the revenue neutral rate, which will be combined at the September 10th meeting. And that's when, of course, we would do all the approvals for the budget at that time. So that's a quick look at the upcoming calendar for about the next 5 months.
So are you all gonna propose raising the total dollars taxed on property?
Our preliminary, we anticipate that, yes, the preliminary recommendation to you would have that in it. And we'll get to that as we go through the next couple of documents. The next document there, just want to give you a little context. And let me pull that document up too. So I'll stop sharing calendar. So the top part of this document shows the unencumbered cash for all our funds for the past several years. And I think it gives a good context of some of what's happened. So on this line that's highlighted, line number 17, well, it's 17 on what's showing on the Excel document. But anyway, it's the first highlighted line there, total general fund. You can see that in 2019, at the end of the year, we had somewhat over $14 million. The next year stayed pretty much the same. Then in 2021, it took this big jump up to 22 million. That's most of that is from the HERF money. I think you're all aware. We received about $16 million of grant money from HERF. What was basically that there were 3 grants that the federal government authorized and gave to us in response to the epidemic or the COVID pandemic at that time. So just to give you an idea, there in 2021 on the general designated account, which is the second line down, you can see it goes from 1.5 million up to 8.7. A lot of the money from the grants we spent right on equipment or PPE or technology and things like that. Some of the money that was for what the grant allowed us to take for loss of revenue or the indirect cost calculation, we could just put into the general fund. And we chose not to put it into the operating fund, but to put it into the designated accounts so we could kind of keep track of it more. And you see also the general operating budget in 2021 also went up from 7.7 million to 10.7 million. So that was again, partly because we were able to use some of the HERF money to offset things that we would have normally bought out of the operating fund. Then we kind of distributed some of the HERF money. Like in 2022, if you kind of look down there, you can see that the general designated account went down from 8.7 to 1.7, but we put 2.1 million into the strategic initiative designated account. We created the deferred maintenance designated account and put almost $5 million in there. We were able to supplement a little more, I think, to the technology fund. We set up this insurance deductible designated account, put 500,000 in there. Also, if you look down more towards the bottom of this section under restricted funds, you can see that from 21 to 22, the restricted fund balance went from 128,000 up to 786,000. That was because we put about another million and ultimately 1.5 million into the self-funded health insurance program. So we used some of the HERF money to get the self-funded health insurance up and going, which I think is proving very beneficial to us at this time. Year ended 2023, you can see either on the general operating or on the total general stayed about the same. For 2024, we anticipate a lot of that money being spent. And so we anticipate the the total general fund going down from about 21 million down to a little less maybe than 15 million. Now, these are estimates, and we'll refine some of these estimates in these designated funds when we give you the presentation at the April work session. But I think this is a very important context in that sometimes it seemed like we were having a lot of cash balances, but they were from one-time money. And so that only is going to take us so far. And so again, I think this was just important context that I felt should be shared, and I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have them, or try to.
Now, is that like on some of the capital improvement plans, did that include where the 500 building was upgraded in the air conditioning system, and what's happening over at the 900 building and even part of the renovations that went to the child daycare center or the Edge Center or whatever?
That was all first money, wasn't it?
Yeah, a lot
You-
of the, and, you know, Kent
The big-
has the, we've showed it to you before, the whole list of the different
Mhm.
maintenance projects and what have been completed and what are still on the list and stuff. So
But the
Yeah, a
but the
lot of
big
the-
capital or the big
a lot.
like deferred maintenance items that needed to be improved got improved.
Yes, like the 500 building was the biggest one. And that did come from this one-time money. So that's a big part of why you see that decrease between 23 and 24. So the bottom part of this document, and I don't think this is a surprise to anybody, but it is context as we move forward with, looking at the administrative recommendation. We have lowered the mill levy from 2019 to 2024 from 20 mills down to a little over 12 mills. The actual taxes levied have also decreased, obviously not as much because we didn't take advantage of those valuation increases. So again, I don't think this is any surprise, but I do believe it's context as we move forward to start talking about the where we are this year and what we're going to recommend to you for next year. So if there are no questions there, I'm going to move ahead, stop sharing this document, move ahead to the little document that has a purple band across the top of it. We have purple and gold documents. And I wanted to differentiate those because these documents with the purple are referring to the current year's budget. And this is a 3-page document I've given you. And I'd like to start on the 3rd page. So as you look at the 3rd page, this is a summary of the expenditure budget for the current year. And the top section are changes that we made when we gave you the budget update at the end of November. So the bottom section, which is bolded, these are changes and they're all reductions that we think we can make to the current year budget. And a lot of this is based on just going back through our payroll budgets and looking at positions that are not filled at this point. Some of them are just not filled because of turnover, or some of them though have been on the books, and some of the budget officers felt that they might need to fill these positions, but some of them have been on the budget for a couple of years without being filled. So the first item there is just the 350,000. That's we always have to estimate the amount of money it'll take to fund raises for each year. And this year, for some reason, we were fairly far off in that estimate. And we think that we can reduce that estimate by $350,000. So take that out of the budget. There's also a piece of the budget that we call temporary allocations, whereas there's turnover and sometimes then somebody will fill a position and we'll need to either add money to that because the person's hired in at more money, or we'll be able to save money. Sometimes when people leave, we have to, they get paid for their sick leave and things like that. So we believe we can reduce that budget this year by 61,000. So that's another decrease. Then these next, I believe there's 7 or 8 items here. These are budgeted positions that were in our budget at the beginning of the year, the current year, which we are not filling, and we think we're recommending they be taken out of the budget. The administrative team has reviewed this, and we've determined that we don't need to fill these positions. So again, overall, it comes to about $1 million of budget decreases for the current year. And we'll go back to I'd like to just go back to the page 2 now and just talk about the revenues. We don't really anticipate much in the way of revenue changes. There's a little bit more work to be done on analyzing the student tuition and fee revenue, and we may be reducing that, but it's not going to be, I think, a significant amount. The initial estimate was about $80,000. And so when we bring this back to you next month, there may be some changes here, but for right now, we don't anticipate anything significant. The ad valorem tax amount you see there, actually, that was for the change that the board approved last September. We had recommended a budget that had it kept the taxes the same as they were last year. You, as board, determined that you wanted to reduce that by about $170,000 so that the mill levy equaled the revenue neutral rate, even though we had previously passed a motion that would allow us to exceed it. So that's what that is anyway. So then moving on to the page 1 of this document, which is a summary of where we think we're at for the current year. And as I go through this, I might ask my trusted assistants here to pass out the next document to save some time, because we're looking at the current year now, and the document that they're going to pass out will look at where we think we're at this point in time, getting ready to make the recommendation for next year's budget. So I'll put this up on the screen. So the operating revenues, and this front page just compares what we showed you at the end of November. That's the first column. And then where we think we're at right now is the far right column, and it shows the change there. And again, this far right column will be updated when we give you the information at the April work session. But you can see that on the expenditure budget, we've reduced this $1 million. And that will carry over. That'll be a reduction to the base budget for next year. So it's not just a one-time reduction. It will carry forward. That's a permanent reduction in our budget. Now, with some of those positions, we think that we're not going to maybe achieve quite as much unspent budget this year. In November, we had anticipated that unspent budget to be about 2.9 million. Right now, we anticipate that to be about 2.6 million. So overall, it's about a 700,000 decrease to our anticipated expenditures for the current year. You can see on line 7 there, we still anticipate a deficit budget. We still anticipate that our expenditures will be greater than our revenues this year by about $1.6 million. Now, if we, that's what yes. So if you look up on line 1, we anticipate about 53.5 million in revenues for the current year. We anticipate that our expenditures will be about 55 million. So we are anticipating that we will again be reducing the unspent budget in our operating funds. And that's shown on lines 9 and 10 of this document. If we're still looking at the 10.5% guideline, that would still leave us over that guideline in the unencumbered cash at the end of this year by about $3 million in our reserve. That's what we're talking about. There is our reserves. So it's good news, bad news. We don't we don't want to keep projecting these deficit budgets forever in the future. That just won't work. So this is kind of a snapshot of where we think we are right now. And I would be happy to stop and answer any questions you have at that point, or we can move on to the next document, which is the sort of the preliminary recommendation that we'll be bringing to you next month. Not, I'm going to go ahead and change my screen share here. Oh, actually, it's on the same document. So I'd like to begin on this document, which has the yellow highlight on it. In the same way, going to page 3. And what we're showing you here are the additions to the expenditure budget for next year that the administrative team at this time feels would be appropriate for us to recommend to you to maintain the level of performance of the college. And I don't know if you want to go down through these one by one. May want to just take a kind of a glance at them and I can answer questions. You see that in the first column, we want to show the compensation increases that we're going to be recommending separately from the non-compensation recommendations for next year, because obviously that's 80% of what we think right now that we're going to be recommending to you at the April work session when we bring you the preliminary recommendation for next year.
On page 2, you're wanting to raise taxes.
Yeah, I get to page 2 in a minute. Right now I'm on page 3 and I wanted to see if there were any questions on page 3.
Hang on here. Increase for fleet vehicles. It's just this, that's what it was this year, was 100,000, correct?
The increase for the current year No, I think our budget for this year is $80,000. And so we're recommending another $100,000. We've gotten way behind on that.
So what is this for? Is that for the new lease agreement?
Yes. What we're gonna do is if we don't have to pay use all this money for the leases, then we're gonna set up a designated account to maintain that, and then we'll monitor it. And after 2 or 3 years, we can see where we are, and we may be able to decrease at that time. But this should set us up going forward to where we think we can maintain the fleet in a way it should be maintained. It had gotten really far behind. So again, we may know more about these next month. And some of them we won't know till year end, like the property insurance. I'm hopeful that we may not need to increase it by 170,000, but that was information we were getting early on based on trends and the loss experience of the consortium that we're in. So are we okay going to page 2 now? This gives us the assumptions that we're looking at in creating our recommendation. And I'll start at the top. We don't anticipate any change in our student revenues for next year. We're hopeful that we can maintain our enrollment. We did have you slightly reduced the rate for in-county students, but I think that was only like probably a $10,000 hit to revenue. It's not significant. Our state aid for next year in the operating grant, you see we put in there a 3.4% decrease. The budget document that came from the governor to the legislator and what Heather Morgan is telling us to expect is about a $680,000 decrease in our state aid. So that's what this 3.4% equates to here. And you can see that on the first page when we move over and look at the summary. We do have some state aid that we're anticipating that will help us aside from the tiered and non-tiered operating budget. So last year we received about $1.6 million in capital outlay money. We put that over into a designated fund. We didn't put any of it into the operating budget last year. We think that we may need to use some of that to offset operating expenditures next year, which would be things that would qualify if we looked at the capital outlay statute for guidance. It would be things like maintenance and equipment. And we think with the between facilities and IT on the computer purchases for next year, we could probably use about $750,000 of that for operating funds for next year, and put the rest of it, if we get to 1.6 again, put the rest of it back into the designated fund or the deferred maintenance. So that's sort of the preliminary thoughts that we've had in exec council at this point. Also, there's the $250,000, which is for cybersecurity, which we think could offset on a one-time basis some of the cost for the IT department for cybersecurity at that time. And as far as we know, that we think that'll be one time for next year. Hopefully Heather will work some magic and that'll be an ongoing $250,000 every year. We just don't know at this time. There is another chunk of money from that we think we'll get from the state. Well, actually, there's two more. There's the apprenticeship money, which we got last year, about 1.6, I think. It's somewhere in that neighborhood. And it's very specific what that can be used for. So we put that into a designated fund last year, and we anticipate that will go into a designated fund again next year and not be part of our operating fund budget. But we'll show you, when we do the supplemental information, where we think that'll go in our designated accounts. The other piece is new this year, and it's called Student Success Funds. And we anticipate it could be in excess of $1 million for us. We don't really know for sure yet. And so right now we're not planning on putting any of that into the operating budget to offset existing expenditures, but we're going to study that and see exactly what we can do with that money. And I don't know, Kim, do you want to speak out to that anymore?
Right now, there aren't any guidelines really set around it. It's really pretty open-ended right now in discussion, but what they are telling institutions is that it has to be used to address student success initiatives really focused on retention of students, serving underrepresented student populations, enrollment, those kinds of things. And so that's about what we know right now of those guidelines. So as we go along, and Heather Morgan probably will have more information each week this time of year because of budget discussions and things coming in and out of committee and votes on the floor and stuff like that. We continue to get some updates. So maybe even on Friday this week, we'll have a little bit more information about what those funds can be used for. But
Okay, so the next item, and Shelby, this is where you want to talk about here. Few seconds ago, we did want to start the discussion with the board about the mill levy, and it's our, as we've gone through our deliberation at the senior management level at this point, we do feel that in order to have a reasonable expenditure budget next year, we are going to need to recommend a mill levy increase. And just to jump forward a little bit, if you look, when we get over to the next page or the front page on this preliminary budget under all these assumptions that I put forward and explained to you here would still leave us with a deficit budget next year of around, where's that here? About 1.1 million. So that's where we're at this time. We feel that that's something that we're going to need to recommend in order to maintain the operations of the college. It's partly why I want to show you, for context, where we've been with the mill levy the past 5 years. And that's sort of where it is. And I guess I can stop now and see what your comments and questions are.
Simple math, you're going to raise property taxes on citizens of Butler County 22% in 1 year. And everyone in this room 4 months ago was talking about how important it was and how much we value taxes and all that, which I know is election year. But a 22% hit on property taxes, that's
What's a 22% hit?
raising them from 12.5 to 15.3. That's 22% increase in your property taxes. Dollars. Not mill levy, just 22% increase in your taxes. Total taxes, everything.
and
I would say that my valuation,
It'll go up and then.
oh, I know it went up.
Went up and then your mill levy goes.
Yeah, then you're
Talking a few hundred.
but I also am worried about sustainability.
That's why I've asked for all these fill ratios and all this expenditures, because we're spending the same expenses we have We've lost, 30% of our students in 10 years, we're still spending the same. I don't think that's the taxpayers' fault or their responsibility.
Well, we've had expenses go up just like you have at your own personal house. Food prices go up, this goes
No,
up, that goes
I
up.
understand, but let's see. For instance, and total number of classes with 7 or fewer students is about 26%. Can't tell me that stuff can't be done. We keep doing things like we do and just raise taxes to compensate. It's not gonna fly with me, but it's been the 5th year I keep saying the same thing, so.
I don't
This-
think we're doing things like we've always done them either, because we just gave a list of a bunch of positions that were walked away from.
Right, but we're gonna be presented the new gentleman with like a food truck, something or other, or keep doing more pathways, and they're told like we're 65 or $68,000 for a prison administrator, and we're told that it's not doing as well as we thought last month. I just don't see. A lot of my kids have been in classes with 2 to 5 students, and it's anecdotal, but it's 5 out of 5 kids over 10 years.
So I think let's, talk about budget stuff, and then Heather and Phil can provide some enrollment information. The enrollment's not a cookie cutter thing. I think it's really important to understand that it's a multifaceted decision that our folks look at really, really carefully and make really critical and strategic decisions on. And there's reasons sometimes when those class numbers are small, but we can
Right.
talk about
That's
that.
the way I framed
Yeah.
my issue of a budget cut. And then you all can figure out what works best for the college.
This, the projected budget also, I mean, it's obviously, you guys know it's estimates right now, so there includes a salary increase, what we think health insurance is gonna look like, all that sort of stuff. And so that's all pretty flexible.
Right, we're
pretty-
budgeting a
Pretty
0%
variable right now.
loss in enrollment at the same rate, which has been consistently 2 to 3%. So that's gonna be 2 to 3% decrease in that revenue.
Well,
Possibly.
again, that's a variable.
No, I understand.
And we've had this conversation over the last couple of years and indicated every year when we talked about operating budget and legal budget that we're getting ourselves into a little bit of a hole here because we haven't taken the valuation increases. We've continued to drop the mill levy to try to address. And we've talked about how it's gonna come back at some point in time and there's gonna have to be a readjustment. Now, is it, does it happen this year? Does it happen in stages? Those are all things that we have to talk about and that you have to help us understand. But it's also important for you to know that we're looking critically internally right now as VPs at our budgets and looking for positions. If we have to put together a multi-level budget discussion and to cut, we're going to prioritize those things. That's what we did after COVID. We put together a 4-tier plan to look at if we have to cut this amount, these are the first things that we're going to cut. If we have to go deeper, these are the next things that we're going to cut. And so we're looking at that internally because we understand that there has to be a balance. But when your health insurance continues to go up and your utilities continue to go up and all of those, and we need to compensate our employees as well, because we want to maintain a healthy, a good employee base, and we need to help offset their costs that are increasing on a personal level as well. So there's, it's obviously, that there's a balance that we have to find.
My idea to beat the dead horse. We currently have a really crisis in teachers for public schools. Very short in teachers there, and here we are at Butler with teachers teaching small classes. If stuff was to consolidate, no teacher will be hurt because there are jobs for them.
They have to get credentialed at the high school level in a different way that the faculty here are credentialed. They have to get,
I understand the
12
jobs are
K-12
available.
certifications. Well,
Our full-time equivalent employee has increased the last 3 years while still declining 3, and 2.5 or whatever.
I'm not sure that our faculty would want to teach at the K-12 level.
I didn't say the faculty would, but there has to be some, there's classes offered in here like a 7 o'clock and a 9 o'clock in the same class. One has 2 students, one has 4 to 6 students. It's not everywhere, but there are things that could be
Those might be bridged classes though, in another location, but.
And I
those are
asked
things
earlier
that
if we
you
had a
guys-
policy that.
I think too, our faculty don't, a lot of them don't get degrees in education. They get degrees, if they did, they wouldn't be credentialed to teach for us. So they're getting those degrees, a lot of them in the discipline area that they're teaching. So they would have to go get a bachelor's degree in education in some cases, or go take the licensure if they meet those requirements to teach. And again, may not even want to teach in that. I mean, they chose college. That's the career that they chose.
I understand, but 70+% of our teachers come from Wichita-ish, and same with the students. I mean, we as a county are just paying people to drive over here, teach, and then drive home. As a-
We're not paying them
Market-
to drive. We're paying them to
No, I
give their
understand. I'm
knowledge
just
and
saying-
expertise to our students, and they do a
But when I
really
see
good
the
job.
bill
of it.
ratios like this, you can't, it'd be hard to make the argument that we're doing everything. I mean, I'm trying not to micromanage, but I'm trying to figure out,
It's oversimplification is what it is.
well, I understand, but
It's very much oversimplification. I mean, if you want to walk through all of the data that we have offered you, but you can't make rush judgments about the data we have given you, because respectfully, you're picking out very isolated examples.
I got this Thursday night with several hundred.
Right.
pages, So I haven't
That's right.
gone,
Yeah.
I don't want to deep dive and then just get yelled at.
Well,
What oversimplification is like 22% tax raise. We're done for this year. Don't have to make any changes, or as many changes as should be made. And we'll deal with it again next year, maybe. I mean, we're all being informed now, so it's not. I mean, I'll be saying the same things the next 4 months, and we all know it, so.
well, and we're happy to walk you through the data, but the data is extremely complicated. The issue of how many pathways we have is much more complicated than it appears
Okay.
from the data, because, for instance, about 1,500 of our students are liberal arts majors. And that is a very complex issue in terms of what they intend to transfer. We are always trying to serve the universities that we are sending transfer students to. And one thing that you are not all aware of at all is the whole state system of general education has been redesigned this year. And so all of our degree pathways have to change to serve that change of gen ed. And so we are currently studying all of our degree pathways in terms of the coursework we have to offer in terms of the state expectation. So it's very, very complex.
Another thing, it's a broad generalization. We built a building in Andover, bought it, remodeled it. We lost 6% of our students there over X number of years. What do we do about that? We need to address this issue.
See, I personally think we ought to build a new dorm to attract more out-of-town students, because students do not like to live in dorms that have communal bathrooms. And all of the colleges around us, KU, K-State, Wichita, Emporia State, have all remodified their dorms to where when I went to Emporia State, we had community bathrooms. Now nobody wants to live where there is a community bathroom. We want our own bathroom. That's how the kids are.
They want their own.
And
room,
in
too.
order to meet the needs, we're going to have to think about capital improvements to this, and even the possibility what would happen if we built a dorm in Andover. You know, I mean, think outside the box.
I think it's also important to remember that the out-district students are paying $30 more a credit hour than our in-district students, a little bit more than that now with the decrease. And so if they take, I mean, you talk about and worry about the taxpayers supporting those students. If we didn't have those students, we wouldn't have nursing, we wouldn't have business, we wouldn't have marketing. Those out-district students create an economy of scale for this college that allow our Butler County students to have great access to a good education, that they help support that in a significant way. Those students on an average year, if they take a full load, they pay more just in that differential tuition, not counting the rest of the tuition, but they pay more in their differential tuition than the average Butler County taxpayer pays on an annual basis for their home. If you figure that the average home in Butler County is, what is it, Kent, $120,000-$130,000 home, I think, in Butler County. Now,
That would not be the average.
well, you get it off of the website. It is the average from Butler County. You can look at it and see.
I think it's a little higher.
Is it higher? Okay, well, you can get it off the Butler County website, the county website. That's where we take that. So those out-district students pay more just in differential tuition than the average taxpayer in Butler County pays if they have an average assessed value home. They create the robust opportunities for the rest of the students because of their attendance and because of the money that they pay. So I'm going to always have that altering perspective and argument, because those top 10 programs, ESOM Consortium, we look at just out district students. Nursing and the pathways to nursing are number one. Business, marketing, IT, there's a number of them that are on that list that we wouldn't be able to offer in the way that we do.
I'm not asking we turn away any students, but we've lost 60,000 credit hours with keeping the same amount of staff. Staff needs to shrink to handle the same amount of students, which will cut our overhead, which will allow us to run more efficiently.
We have for a long time, but we look at especially the faculty positions. When those faculty positions come open, we look to see if that has to be refilled. What's their load like, and what's the load of classes like? When we have staff positions that come open, we do the same thing. There aren't very many people in very many offices at this college that will tell you that they have excess staff, that they have people sitting around without things that have to be done. And part of that is just change in operations. Part of it is change in reporting, all of those kinds of things. Because you lose a certain number of students doesn't mean necessarily that you can reduce the staff in financial aid, or that you can reduce the staff in admissions, or that you can cut, multiple faculty positions, because you still have to they still have to cover classes. We've reduced a number of adjunct faculty. That's where when you reduce faculty positions and you don't, when you cut class sections and consolidate, oftentimes where you're reducing is on the adjunct side, because the full-time faculty still need their loads filled. And you have to go through a different process. If, you can't just eliminate a full-time faculty position without going through a defined process. And so what you do is take away the load from the adjunct faculty, and the full-time faculty, then, maybe you're teaching that class.
So a teacher teaching 7 hours at full load, and a teacher teaching not seven students, a teacher teaching 3 students, but still 2 teachers teaching a full load to unfilled classes.
But those 3 students may need that class for
I
commencement and
understand,
for
but we could do it
graduation.
at the same time and tell them, these are the times we offer. We need to do this currently because of our situation. Arrange your schedule
It's not quite
accordingly.
the way it works,
I know, but if
unfortunately.
we offer everything to everyone all the time, it's not sustainable without raising.
I think you would be well informed to sit down with the deans at the beginning of the semester and understand the work that they do starting a month ahead of classes, and understand how they look at that schedule and how they consolidate and how they cancel classes and how they rearrange loads, because it's not as simple as you identify it.
I
And
think
what may
too,
start out as
again,
10 or
maybe-
12 students may finish up with 4 or 5 because some students withdraw along the way. I mean, I had to go an extra semester because a class was not offered in the spring, and I had to go the fall in order to complete my degree program. And then I had to then enroll in more classes because to be a full-time student.
And that's how it all worked out. I think that's what Shelby's point is. I mean, are we as a college going to create a class for 2 or 3 kids so that they can graduate, or say, well, you may have to wait and take that next semester? It comes down to, again, at wants and needs. If we've lost 60,000 credit hours, the question becomes, is that spread evenly across all of our programs? every education, exactly, every education facility that not, I shouldn't say every. I've heard recently of countless education facilities across the state and the nation that are trying to reevaluate where they put their resources. And I think that's, for me, it would be helpful to know, you know, you talk about our top programs. Okay, are there programs that we should or could eliminate? Should we streamline and focus on what we're really good at to keep what we're good at floating? It's just this notion of all this decrease, but our revenue stays the same, and oh, we need to raise taxes. Like if you have, I don't know exactly what percentage of our property tax goes to Butler Community College, and it's like 30%, 25 or 30%. Well, we're,
Depending on your school district.
yeah, exactly. So if you say, whatever, you're,
25.
yeah. Anyway, so this tax increase,
Uh-uh. No, mine is
Lower than that.
minus like
If
one.
you're in the country and
1%.
Don't have a school district, your taxes to Butler, not 1%.
It's
What's
Okay,
your
my-
address? I'll look
my
it up.
my taxes left for Butler Community College was $240 last year.
Okay.
And
Okay.
I paid $3,100 in taxes.
so
okay.
as we go up to 292.
And so-
2%.
So it'll go, if it goes up 200, it'll go up $48.
Mhm.
So it'll go up to 288. Guess what $288 is to me? The way I look at $240 is that's one time going out and eating a month.
That's understood, but
That's-
it's,
You're
that's-
demanding
I
other
understand
people,
that,
other
but
people
that's-
pay. That's,
But
you can do what you want with your finances, but you.
But
take
I
it from
also
someone
know
else's
what I'm
farm.
getting back from Butler too. I'm getting back a lot from Butler being here, whether it's with economic benefit. I mean, in Augusta, you can complain about Augusta not having any Butler benefit, but I bet you there are
We have
people
some,
who
I didn't
live
say
in
none.
Butler, who work at Butler, that live in Augusta,
Yeah, there are.
Oh.
The ESOM's economic impact study for just Butler County identifies that this college has over a $49 million impact just in Butler County. So, just easy numbers, basically. If we have last year, $13 million, a little under $13 million that have come from the taxpayers, they're getting a return of $49 million just in this county because of college operations and spending and students and, all of that sort of stuff. So there's a return on investment.
That study is designed as a marketing study by that company and not a critical
Oh,
analysis.
I don't think so. I think ESOM can tell you that it's nationally normed data sets that are used. It's not a marketing ploy at all. It's just not.
On their website, it does say.
Yeah.
So back to the 7 students, 3 students. I want to make sure that the board understands that you can look at a line and see that, but unless you know the full detail of, and I've talked about this every year for how long, 4 years, Shelby, we've talked about things like Council Grow, where we are connecting 2 classrooms together. One group may have 3, the other may have 7. Those classes sometimes are paired together. Yes, we have students that need it for their major. I wouldn't say that that's the explanation for the majority of those sections. For the majority of them, there's an explanation that isn't that we're just paying a full salary for 3 students.
No,
And I
it's
gave
super
some of
complicated.
the examples in the narrative that Phil and I provided. But the other thing to note too is we have a system in place for program viability. We run that on a regular basis. We are constantly looking at not just fill rates, not just number of students in majors, but we're looking at what does business and industry need? What do employers need so that we can produce students in those areas? That program viability helps with that. We're not just saying, well, we've always offered these majors, so let's continue offering them. We're looking at the data and trying to make the best decisions. But eliminating a major, a program, doesn't always reduce all of those classes either, right? Foreign language, for example. We could say there's not very many foreign language students that are majors, but that course, a lot of those courses are required for every pathway that we offer. So eliminating a program doesn't necessarily create the savings that you would think.
Trying to argue consolidation, have a kid at speech, El Dorado, 8 a.m. Tuesday, Thursday. Prime time, 6 kids. I can't tell me it could have been offered at another time, and he's 16, he would be available when his class is available.
Well, and I think it's also important to recognize the fact that our pool of students has much more breadth of choice than I think that we can get into a kind of high school mentality that is a controlled pool of students, and we can tell them when they are going to take things. We have to cater to the lifestyles, the family choices, the employment variables that students have to make their choices depending on. It's not that easy to say, oh, well, you can take this course on Thursday at 8 because you could take it on Tuesday. Well, possibly not. In terms of when we cancel classes, we do everything we can possibly to do to get those students shifted into another section. And we've done a lot of progress with that in the past year. We were getting only about 60% in terms of being able to shift them. And this year we got up to 76% of students that could be consolidated. But what happens to those other students? They're probably lost.
What I hear from administration, we offer all the classes all the time, and however few students we have is what we're doing, because we need to reach out and be available for everyone as
That's,
much as possible.
that's an inaccurate generalization.
What?
I think it's oversimplifying it again. I think the data that we provided you comes from Ad Astra. That data also is helping educate us on when we should put classes where. We're trying to use the data that we have so that we can make informed decisions in addition to looking at our pathways and knowing to get, when you have as many programs as we do, trying to align a schedule that allows a student to complete. Also, some of the information we provide to you shows you that the majority of our students are part-time, right? So we have to create offerings in a way that allows to meet students where they are, like Phil said. But I mean, it's not as simple as just we offer everything all the time. That's not true. We put
guys-
together schedules and students don't enroll in them. We cancel those sections.
Right, but you oversimplify on your side. I'm just trying to state, in general, we've lost over 30% of our enrollment, 60,000 credit hours. We're keeping everything generally the same size. Our expenses are going up $1.6 million in raises this year. How do we sustain that? It's not fair to the local taxpayers who support it. I think it's unfair. I think some decisions need to be made to consolidate. I don't think that's. But anyway, I think we're going around.
Mary Martha.
Heather, do the deans and associate deans, do they teach?
Very few. I mean,
would, if they do, it's as adjuncts.
yeah, they don't carry a teaching load. They may teach a class. Like I have in the past taught a 1 credit hour professional development course that I do. I either take leave for it or I do it during my lunch hour.
So those deans that are teaching adjunct, do they get paid an adjunct salary then on top of that?
Yeah, I used to teach a class. I was just an adjunct.
There are parameters in place though that require, I mean, kind of cap the number of hours you can teach and also require supervisor approval to do that. It's not something that's done regularly in terms of this person carries this load.
Okay, I think we've heard a lot of comments on the topic this evening. We're not going to settle anything today. So, are there other board work session items? And were you finished, Kent?
Yes.
I'm sorry, were you finished?
Did you all look through all this data that was sent, or is it not?
I have.
I shouldn't even bother going into it. Nice.
Look through it. I made some highlights.
Okay, other comments? Other topics?
Something that would probably need to put on the April agenda would be turf and track
Yeah, we'll have some track
numbers for you.
Also, just to clarify, Butler Community College taxes are 10.5% of my tax bill. And I think I've looked at that and I'm not in a city, I'm in a township, so it could be a little different in the.
Probably less than mine considering this.
Some of them do change based on your
Yeah,
school district.
yeah.
It throws off the.
Yeah, if you have a
I was
township.
going to say
instead
the
of
school
city.
district in the city takes more money than the college
Oh, for
does.
sure.
Dr. Mohammed, do you have comments on this?
Oh.
Or, you? No.
This is a county level economic impact study, which we did to kind of complement the system wide. I thought you wanted to see the county level impact as well. It is a little more detailed than we did last time around. There are some assumptions that I've noted down, pretty hefty reference section. And I also make concession to the fact that there are some philosophical ideas that, well, maybe this is not what everybody wants to see, and there are some philosophical issues with economic impact studies. But it comes, all the sources are there, the numbers are there. It should be a complement to the statewide thing that we have seen, but it's not. I don't. So, and I'll take any questions that you may have, easy ones preferably.
So for instance, if you're saying someone makes $100,000 a year teaching, is that a economic impact for Butler County, even though they live in Sedgwick County or another county?
No, it does not. So there, what you see is that there is a certain percentage of our employees who live here, their wages are included in it, but everybody's is not. Same with the purchases we do. So the assumptions are listed there. They're which ones are attributable to Butler County and which are not. And if you, one of the things you will see is in some of the assumptions, we have gone quite a bit far into Butler County in the sense, for example, the traditional economic impact studies simply say, well, this is how much taxes come out of Butler County, which is the mill levy. In this one, we have gone above and beyond and said, in addition to that, Butler County residents are also responsible for paying a portion of what the state levy comes to us, because we know about 2 to 3% of it comes from Butler County. So it is a very conservative study in that sense.
Is this similar to the other one where you say, well, you went to Butler, so for the rest of your entire life, all of your income is attributed somewhat to Butler, which would be like saying your high school contributes to where you go with.
That's a very good point.
You're here and graduate
stay
from
here.
Shaw State.
And that's a
which
very
one do
good
you
question.
Get the numbers from.
And that one we have not used that at all. Yeah, that's a very good point.
And if you would like to come to a fundraiser on Friday, there's a fundraiser at the 4-H building on Friday for the athletic department.
Commercials now. Anything else? Any other questions? Thank you for the information.
I did ask if we had a policy to address all this issue, like if we have X number of time before a class starts, is there an actual policy that would collaborate? And it sounded like maybe not exactly precisely.
Yeah, it would be difficult to put a single policy in place because there are,
Except like dance is never gonna have more than, well, hopefully it has a bunch, but I mean, it's not gonna meet 20 kids in dance necessarily.
yeah, or you have classes paired together, like I've mentioned earlier. There's just different, we do monitor those fill rates. We get a report daily. Zach and Phil and I meet before the start of every part of term to go through. We ask the deans to look through the courses on the schedule that are have low enrollment, and we assess that need. And another example is if we have military, right, who are enrolled in sections, they have a cutoff date by which they lose their tuition assistance from the government. So if we cancel their class, they're out that TA, which hurts our enrollment in the future. So we don't cancel those sections if there's students using TA for that. So there's not a written policy. we meet on a regular basis. The deans monitor that enrollment on a regular basis. And then, as you can see from the information we've provided, we have continually, over the last few years, decreased the number of sections that we offer.
Isn't it in here somewhere where there's like 3,000 sections or something, 3,000? I couldn't find it right now. That's on the
You're
back.
counting way more than I am.
It was on.
And
Yeah,
this,
and
and this item, the credit hours, just adding it up, it was like 8,000 more than our other numbers, but no
Oh, well,
discrepancy.
well,
It's Esom's
so
fault.
understand that that it depends upon when that information was,
Well,
is it end of term? Is it
it said
20th day?
2023, so I assumed it was up to date.
Well,
It exceeded what we had, so I just.
Which is it from?
I
What's
don't know,
the
it's a
title
single-
of the
it's a single
spreadsheet?
Page, I don't remember which one it was, just a
one that Esom said.
two-page.
Why numbers should add up? The ones that we-
Board of Regents.
Okay. It said 132, but I think we were at like 124, 120 something. I'm doing it on an iPhone, so that's Butterfinger sometimes. But
One thing to consider when you look at ESOM's numbers from the data that we supplied is our data was current and is essentially a current snapshot. What ESOM has to report is at a fixed time for the state. So
I'm trying to ignore 2024 a bit since we're in flux and Boston.
Well, but even the data we provided is real time, so it's whatever. So for the years prior, it would be the end of the term, whatever we ended up with versus, so it won't line up with what ESOM gave you because that was the 20th day snapshot, while ours is exactly what it is the moment we pulled that information.
Okay, if nothing else, I would entertain a motion for adjournment.
Well, you don't
Have
need
to,
to.
because
for
we're
our-
working.
Oh,
Don't
we're
need to.
done.
Any boo-boo.
I've,
We're done.
Count the gavel.
I should.
I've reached my end.